And let's go ahead and discuss the first presenter. You're in for a real treat today. We have Catherine Spisszak. She's the project manager for Esri Demographics, and she'll be discussing the types of demographic content available in the Living Atlas of the World, and she'll be giving demonstrations of how this data can be accessed. Then we'll have Alan Carroll, who's the Esri Program Manager for Storytelling, and he's going to share with us best practices for how to create a good story map. And then after each presenter has finished presenting, there will be time for some Q&A, and we encourage you to ask questions through the chat window while each presenter is speaking. And if we don't get to your question in the allotted time, we'll be sure to send a follow-up email answering your question. And finally, we'll have Jim Herries, who's the Esri Cartography Product Engineer, who's been working on that Living Atlas contributor app, give you an update on that app. If there was time at the end, we'll share with you some announcements. If at any time you find that when the presenters are sharing their screen, if the presentation becomes too small on your screen, you can adjust it by using the menu at the top of the presentation window. You can access this menu by hovering at the top of the window while the presenter is sharing their screen. Click the down arrow on the far right of the menu and then go to View and choose which option you'd like. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And I am going to pass the presentation privileges to Catherine. All right, let's go ahead and switch. I'm going to go ahead and switch to Alan here while we're waiting for Catherine to get her audio sorted out.
Okay.
All right. So we'll hear about story maps before demographics, but that's fine. Take it away, Alan.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Hopefully I'm prepared. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go through a quick PowerPoint just explaining the basics of story maps. By the way, I'm thrilled that it looks like well over half of those who responded have actually produced a story map. So I will try not to linger too long on the basics, which most of you may know about already. But at any rate, I'll do that rather quickly. Then I'm going to go and show you our website and its major components, and then do a live demo of how our map journal works. So onward and upward. So we've been doing a lot of thinking about what stories are all about, and of course and I'm not talking about fiction stories. These are the way we kind of recount to people what's happened to us. So what we do, of course, is take a complex and sometimes chaotic series of phenomena and try to distill them down into a narrative that makes sense and that captures the essence of what's happened, and that's sort of a basic way we all communicate. Meanwhile, maps do kind of a similar way in a spatial sense. So they take a very complex and chaotic world, and we edit them to choose the topics and subject areas that we want to show, the geographies and the themes that we'd like to communicate. So maps are a very powerful way of communicating, and in fact these two share a whole lot in common in terms of how to kind of model and represent the world and to let other people know about our viewpoint about the world. So that's really what we've been thinking about for the last 4 or 5 years. So story maps, we've created some ourselves, but the main thing we've done is make a subset of the user experiences we've developed into these little apps. So story maps are these apps that combine interactive maps, multimedia content that can be photos, video, audio, text, and user experiences to tell all sorts of stories about the world, from a street corner to the globe. Our story maps are hosted by Esri in the cloud, so you don't have to worry about hosting them yourself unless you want to, in which case you can. Most story maps incorporate builder functions that enable you to build really sophisticated stories without having to know GIS or having to know JavaScript or other web development skills. And that, frankly, is why I can build story maps, because I'm neither a GIS professional nor a web development professional. Most story maps work just as well on small screens as on large screens. And they're open source. So even though we host by default our apps in the cloud, you can download the source code and you can customize them to your heart's content. In fact, we love to see that. And of course, they include an array of apps that provide different ways of interacting with maps. So we've been thinking about these different ways of interacting with maps and trying more or less systematically, usually less, I guess, to develop apps that kind of embrace those different kinds of user experiences. And I will quickly run through the list. I'm not going to show the whole list in any kind of detail, but our two most popular apps are both present sequential narratives. So these take you from point to point across the landscape, sometimes through different themes and even time periods as well. So Map Tour is the simplest one. It presents a sequence of geotagged photos or videos with brief text. Map Journal is a little richer. It accommodates longer form text, and I'll show you that in more detail shortly. And then we've got three apps that display sets of points of interest. So as you can see, our definition of story is a pretty broad one. So these don't tell a sequential story, but they can in a looser way tell the story of a place or a theme by presenting sets of points of interest. Perhaps the most useful of these is Short List, which lots of cities, for instance, are using to present points of interest in and around a city. And it presents 3 or 4 themes, so you can separate points of interest into things like historic sites or places to eat or you name it. And then as you pan and zoom around the map, a gallery of thumbnails refreshes according to your map extent. I'm sorry, I went backward by accident. Then we can also compare two maps in two different ways. It's actually the same app, and you can choose between a swipe function and a spyglass function. Hopefully, sometime soon, we're going to get back to this app and update it, and we'll add a fader as well. And then there are ways to compare several maps. We recently updated this app into what we call Story Map Series with 3 different layout functions. So one uses tabs, one has a side accordion that expands as you go through the narrative, and the other has a series of bullets, all with a builder function that allows you to easily switch back and forth between these things. So back to Story Map Journal. So after looking at the success of Tour, we wanted to build on that, and we also wanted to create something that was a little more versatile and flexible, but especially that would accommodate long-form text, because with Map Tour, if your text is too long, it starts to cover up the picture, which isn't very cool. And it also accommodates a really rich mix of multimedia content. A lot of people are using it to show very rich GIS data, but to interpret it and present it for non-specialist audiences. So I'm going to take you first. I'm going to switch out of the PowerPoint and take you to our website and then show you in a little more detail how Map Journal works. So bear with me for a second. Here's our website, and in a few weeks it's going to be updated. So stay tuned for even more cool stuff. But what we do is present a home page with a gallery of a small gallery of featured story maps. By the way, we've also got a little banner advertising our Storytelling with Maps contest, so I urge you to let people know about that and perhaps enter yourselves if you're interested. But the this little gallery is backed up by a much richer gallery that we actively curate that has close to 1,000 story maps in them. Some of them we've produced, but most of them produced by the community. And so this is a really great place to go to get inspiration and ideas for stories that you might want to work on. And you can filter this in various ways. So I can filter it just to show map journals, for instance. I can also filter by collection or theme. So here are all map stories having to do with culture. Not all, but again, the ones we've curated and added to the gallery. Here are ocean story maps, etc. So you get the idea, and I urge you to spend some time in the gallery. And then finally, the heart of our site is the app list, and it presents pretty much what I described to you in the last few minutes, broken down by these different kinds of storytelling with brief summaries and links to additional information. So for instance, if you're interested in journal, you can go to the journal homepage. Each one of our apps has a homepage, which in turn links to a filtered gallery and a step-by-step tutorial. So if you want to teach yourself how to use the story map, this is the place to go. But a cool thing about this is that I can go straight from that app list page or from this page and just go straight here and start building a map journal. So I just click that and I go straight into the builder that asks me first which format I want to use, and I can always switch later, but I'll choose the default one and click start. And then it shows you, asks you to enter a title, and then you go to the first section and you're off and running. But what I'm going to do instead is show you a story map that I recently published. Actually, just yesterday, in honor of Earth Day, we published a story map on the biggest city parks around the country. So we got a list from the Trust for Public Land showing the most visited parks, and we featured each of them. So because I'm a well, usually, I'm already in the edit mode. I'm sorry. I meant to start in the view mode, but I've switched to the edit mode. If I was in the view mode, I would see a little blue edit button here, and that's visible only to me because I'm the author of the story, or to those who are sharing my same ArcGIS Online account and username and password. But I'm in the builder mode, and that means I'm seeing a menu at the top, and I'm seeing various edit buttons and things. So I can use these to go straight into the different sections of the journal. And I should back up just a second and explain the way Map Journal works is that there's a series of sections that you can scroll through using a side panel, and it can be positioned on the left or the right or floating. And as I go from section to section, the main stage updates. So in this case, it's mostly a series of web maps, but you'll notice that the story starts with a static image, which we feel is usually a nice way to start a story. Rather than plunge right into the detail of a map, you want to give a kind of nice overall first impression. So at any rate, I can go into these sections. I can click the little blue pencil icon, and then I can go in and I find a rich text editor. I can change the size and color of the text. I can copy in text that I've already written, or I can type in text right here in the editor. I can also go and edit the photos that I've included, or add photos to the side panel. But similarly, I can edit the main stage too. So in this case, of course, it's a web map. This is already highlighted here, but I could switch to an image that I can grab from my Flickr account or Facebook or Picasa, or just copy in a URL, taking care, of course, to make sure that that the images I'm using I have the rights to. Or I can use video from YouTube and Vimeo, or embed a web page directly into the page. I'm not going to change that, but I'm going to show you how to add a section. So I go down to the menu at the bottom, click Add Section, and I see a similar kind of menu. So I'm going to add a section called Los Angeles. So I type in a title, And I've already kind of, on another tab on my browser, I've already kind of teed up a web map that I'm going to use. So I'm going to copy the web map ID, and I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to choose Browse for Maps in this little drop-down. I'll copy the ID in, and it goes on ArcGIS Online, and it finds that map, so I'm going to choose it. And then I can customize that map in various ways. So I'm going to check the location. So I've decided I want to zoom in a little bit into Los Angeles to show the central part of the city. So I'm going to save the location. But I also want to edit the content. So I've chosen a web map that has several different layers, and I'm going to get rid of the layers that represent settled areas in Los Angeles in 1970 and 1950 and 1937 to show 1907. So I'm going to save the content. So now I've got the 1907 extent, and then the yellow represents the current kind of densely settled areas. And then I can even configure the pop-ups. So I've got a layer of pop-ups here, and I can click this one showing downtown, and I'm going to click Save the Pop-Up Configuration, and that means that when people come to this section, they'll see that map extent, and they'll see that pop-up already live. And then I can choose whether there's an overview map or a map legend, and I guess I'll opt to have them both on. And I can also copy in the text. So I've got some text already here, so I'm going to copy it over, and then that's there. I won't bother. Well, why not? I will bother with a photograph. So I've also found a photograph of historic Los Angeles that's rights-free. So I'm going to copy the URL of it and go back to my page. And I'm going to go up here, choose the URL, copy in the URL, and include a maximize button, which means people can view a larger version of the image. And click Add, and my section has been added to the story. And because I added that enlarge function, people can enlarge the photo and look at it. So that's how easy it is to add sections to a map journal. Then I can also click the Organize button, and I can decide to drag that entry to a different place in the narrative. I'm going to leave it down there at the bottom. And I can also decide to get rid of it or to hide it, and even to set a publication date. So if I'm doing this as a kind of geoblog, I can set it to automatically publish tomorrow if I want to. So I hit apply, and that's set there. And then I can make further alterations using the menu up at the top. So I can go to settings, and I can switch layouts from the side panel to floating panel. I'll keep it where it is. I can also change from the left, from having the side panel on the left to putting it on the right of the screen, and I can make it larger, hit apply, and automatically that's done. And then I can do things like I can set sharing for private or share within my organization. So this is, as you can see, it's just a really, really versatile way of being able to tell a pretty sophisticated story using interactive web maps published on ArcGIS Online to tell all sorts of different tales. And it's been hugely exciting to see the many, many uses that people are putting this and our other storytelling apps to. So I could show you a few previews of what's coming, but I think I've taken about enough time, so I'll make sure there's plenty of time for my fellow presenters and any questions you might have. Thanks very much.
All right, and thank you very much. That was an awesome presentation. So I think we have a few questions that came in through the chat window while you were speaking. So Let's go ahead and switch gears here for a second, and I'll ask you those questions. And then I believe Catherine is back now. She had some internet issues with, they're having some pretty windy weather, it sounds like. So I think she's back. So we'll go ahead, go over these, I'll ask the questions, and then we'll switch gears and have Catherine present. So the first question Are the story map templates free to use?
Yes, they're completely free to use. As I mentioned, they're open source. You do, in order to use the maps, of course, you need an ArcGIS Online account, and that you can use a public account, which is free of charge. So people have published multiple story maps without paying anything. But again, having an ArcGIS Online account, especially an organizational account, gives you lots of flexibility for publishing and sharing the maps and story map apps.
Okay, great. And I also want to encourage our attendees, if anyone else has any other questions, to type them in the chat window now. Michael asks, does Esri plan to add print functionality to the story map template?
That's a question that we've been asked, and we've been remiss in following through on that. There are some technical challenges with that. So as of now, no, other than through the typical kind of print screen function. But we will be looking into the potential of saving as a PDF and things like that.
Okay, great. And I think we have one more question here quick, and this kind of, I guess, goes along with the previous question. Are you open to hearing suggestions and feedback regarding the templates?
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's hugely important to us, and really fun for us to hear from people what their needs and desires are. So please do let us know. You can contact us through our website.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. And let's go ahead.
Thank you.
Switch presenters to Catherine.
I truly apologize for the technical difficulties we had before. Thank you to Alan for jumping in. We are having 25 to 30 mile an hour winds right now. I just saw a patio chair fly by my window, so apparently that's enough to make the internet go out. So
well, we want you to stay safe, so anytime you need to sign off, feel free, and we can go ahead and go from there.
As long as the internet is live, I am happy to talk about demographic data. So my name is Catherine Spisszak. I am the product manager of the demographic and business data that we have not only for the United States but globally across the platform. And I'm here to tell you all about the demographics that we have in the Living Atlas. So within Esri's content portfolio, within the Living Atlas, there really are 6 main components. They range from imagery to base maps, landscape data, urban systems, and geocoding and routing. Demographics and lifestyle makes up one of those 6 components of the content portfolio that really fuels the platform with all of the data and attributes that you need to make your maps. It's organized into a set of themes, which I'll show you, and it's a combination of not just Esri data, but also third-party and partner content, as well as data that you, the Esri community, has uploaded. One thing I want to note, because I don't think everyone knows this, I saw from the poll that about half of the people have used our demographics, is that Esri actually has a staff of demographers and statisticians and mathematicians on hand. You may not realize that Esri is actually a source of demographic data. We build our own demographics. They have over 50 years of experience, though they don't like me to say that out loud, building the demographic data. So a lot of experience using census data in the United States, the American Community Survey data, which we'll talk a little bit about. But those U.S. estimates that you see for current year and forecast year are actually built by our staff of demographers at Esri. So the Living Atlas, if you go to the feature page on ArcGIS Online and you go onto the readily available maps, you can find the Living Atlas of the world. And as I mentioned, the demographics section is really built into 2 main categories, demographics and lifestyle, which are further broken down even more. There are about 576 demographic-related maps in the Living Atlas. This includes Esri data and the user-created maps as well. Of those 576, 390 of them are the Esri demographics. so built using our data, which is about 67%. I also want to announce that next week we will be updating 53 of those U.S. maps. So we're about to launch our 2015-2020 demographic data for the United States. So 53 of those web maps on the Living Atlas will be updated next week. So I want to quick hop over and just show you, again, as I mentioned, the ways to get to the demographic and lifestyle group is to go to that ready-to-use map section on the feature page, the Living Atlas. And if you scroll down, there is a demographics and lifestyle section. Now within this little features page, you can actually scroll across, and there are some maps that are available for free that are featured. So these include some of our 2014 data, which will be updated to 2015 next week, as well as some global data as well. And these are maps that you can just check out to get a taste of what the demographic data is like. Now, if you click on this link above, you'll actually get to the gallery of the Living Atlas. And as I mentioned, there's two main sections, the demographics, which are further broken down by age, household, income, marital status, population, and race, and then the lifestyles category, which is broken down into at-risk behaviors, which is like market potential type data, what types of things do people spend their money on, what types of activities are they doing. Business and jobs, housing data, so is it apartment complexes, single-family homes, et cetera. Poverty data, and spending, what are people spending their money on. So this is access to all of the web maps that are available on the Living Atlas. Popping back to our PowerPoint, there are those demographic maps. They're available for multiple themes, as I told you. They include pop-ups, which are configurable, and you can change the maps in the individual maps. So you can change what attribute you're looking at within the maps. And as I just showed you, it's available via the demographics and lifestyle group. So for that, I'm just going to turn over really quickly, and realizing there's probably a delay, I want to show you just one map. So this is the 2014 median household income in the United States. So again, this is the Esri data, the United States data that we are building in-house, our demographers are building. It will be updated to 2015 next week. And within this map, you can see we're looking at some block groups within the Washington, D.C. area. We're looking at median household income, so you can see the breakouts. If you click on a pop-up, you can see by age of householder. If you scroll over the bars on the bar chart, you can see the count of households that fall into the age 35 to 44 bracket and where that median household income falls. You can look at the median household income of the United States and compare it to the individual block groups. You can see that there's a variety of geographies available, and I'll talk about that in a later slide. But one way to simply, you can configure your pop-up so you could add different attributes into your pop-up if you want to, or you could configure the map itself. So if you go to change style and you expand this a bit, you can see that within each individual map, there is a way to change the attribute that you're looking at. And you have a whole selection of attributes that are related. You can change it to average household income, per capita income, income by age of householder, so that if you wanted to change the attributes of the individual web map, you could. In addition, you can change the style of the map. You can change how many quintiles you're looking at. If you wanted to set certain ranges, you could do all of that. So all of these maps are fully configurable. We're going to move to talking a little bit about what I exactly mean by demographic data. So what are classifications? What are we looking for when we add new content? Types of data do we want to make accessible to you? And there really are 4 different classifications. There's demographics, spending, lifestyle, and business. So demographics really is a range of who are the people, and tell me about attributes about them, ranging from things like school enrollment and educational attainment to labor force, what types of industry and occupation are people working in, what's their language spoken at home, the average household size, home value, do they own their home or rent their home, what is their home value, housing costs, how much of the rent is a percentage of their disposable income, race and ethnicity, housing, again, if they're living in an apartment or a single-family home, their journey to work, how long is the commute, really studying super commuters, or are they taking public transportation, walking to work, working from home, etc. It's really been very interesting. For a long time, we were focused primarily on the United States, but over the last few years, we've tried to build a global product. And seeing what different types of attributes are important to different countries has really been eye-opening for me. In South Africa, one of the things that they asked on their census form is, can you climb stairs? So that's not something they asked on our U.S. census form. And in some cases, you can get really detailed data that you might not be able to get. Even in India, there's a lot of kitchen facilities and bathroom facility type topics that don't exist in the United States. So it's really fascinating to see all the different demographic attributes that you can get access to on a global scale. Just focusing on the United States, I just wanted to quickly show you what we have. So we have a current year and a forecast year demographic database. We're about to release 2015-2020. We also make the census data accessible, so it's Census 2010. We do have some Census 2000 data available as well for trending. The ACS is the American Community Survey, so that's placed by the Census Bureau. It's an annual data set that's released, and it has all of that rich sample data like vehicles available, marital status, etc. We have our Tapestry segmentation system, which I'll talk to you about. Retail Marketplace is a supply and demand data set. So in a certain area, what are the apparel stores making? What are people in the area spending in apparel stores? And is there leakage or surplus? Spending, market potential, business data, crime data. So we really have a gamut of information. We have over 15,000 attributes available in the United States alone. And they go down to the block group level. So if you're familiar with Census Geography, as I stated when I showed you that web map, we have the Census Geographies down to the block group. We offer the CBSAs, which are metro and micro areas, zip codes, congressional districts. So all of our United States data is available at these levels of geography. This is an example of one of the maps that's available on the Living Atlas in the Demographic and Lifestyle. And this really takes a look at at-risk populations. So we're talking about Superstorm Sandy, the path that the hurricane took, and looking at the impact analysis. So looking at the elderly, really where were those high impact. You can look at home ownership. Owners and renters would be affected differently. They would need different things from their insurance companies, after they're trying to rebuild. Median home value, that's also going to give you a sense of what people are going to need. Income, diversity, all of the information that once, there is a natural disaster, that we're going to want to go back and look at the people that lived there so that we know what type of aid they're going to need. This is also a demographic map that shows the relationship of unemployment to population change, so how people are migrating in and out of areas, how that's affecting the unemployment in the area. A really interesting map to look at population change, unemployment, and the relationship between the two. The second classification of demographics is spending. And this can include dollars spent on certain categories like health insurance or travel or clothing, basic housing and shelter necessities. But it also can include a market potential type data set. So what is the likelihood of people to watch certain TV shows or eat out at certain restaurants or play tennis? All of the interesting things that are going to help you understand more about either your customers or your constituents. So it's also some psychographic information, what they were likely to be more liberal or more conservative, how they're affected by advertising, are they likely to be influenced by billboards, are they likely to recycle or, only eat organic produce, and that type of information is all included in those types of data sets so that you can get a sense of the spending. One example of a spending map that's available through the Living Atlas is this fruits and vegetables spending in the United States. So this is going to show you down to the block group level the dollars spent on fruits and vegetables. And the pop-up will tell you how that compares to spending in other categories of food like meat and poultry, fish and eggs. Again, these are fully configurable, so if you wanted to look at a different attribute, you could, or if you wanted to change how the pop-up appeared, you could do that as well. The third classification of demographic data is the lifestyle. And I like to sort of refer to this as the fast food of demographic data because it sort of packages two categories together. It takes the demographic data category and the spending category that I just spoke to you about and combines it into one so that you can easily, excuse me, you can easily look at not only who the people are, but what they're spending their money on, what activities they're likely to be doing. So this is great for explaining who, what, where, and how. Who are your constituents or who are your customers or target markets? What are they buying? What sorts of activities are they likely to be doing? Where can you find more like them? So because it's a geographic system, once you identify who those, positive targets are, you can find more like them. And then how do I reach them? So that spending category portion of the lifestyle data will tell you whether they're heavy newspaper readers or likely to listen to the radio or watching certain TV shows. So this has both commercial and non-commercial applications. From a commercial perspective, you can find your target markets. Who are your best customers, and how can I find more of them? How do I best reach them through advertising? And from a non-commercial perspective, if you're doing any kind of at-risk analysis, if you're trying to find segments that might need more types of aid, you can find more of them. Where are they located? And again, how is the best way to reach them? Is there a language barrier? Are they listening to the radio, et cetera? So I want to just pop up quickly one of the applications that's called our Tapestry Zip Lookup that actually calls maps that are on the Living Atlas. This is our next generation of Tapestry segmentation. So this is our U.S. segmentation system. There are 67 different segments across the United States. And we launched this segmentation system last year. And it got a lot of press from the Huffington Post, Esquire, Time Magazine. It was on Reddit for quite some time. So it went viral for quite a bit of time. And it's because it's just a really neat application. So you can simply just type in a zip code, and you can see the Tapestry segments that live in the zip code. So clicking on this will give you the description. So these are modest income homes. And if you read through this description, it tells you exactly who these people are. Their families may be non-traditional, but they have religious faith and family values. They're single parents or multi-generation. They have occupations and primary caregivers, et cetera. They play basketball. They watch a lot of TV. So again, you're getting a better picture by combining the demographics and the spending of who these people are. One of my favorite things to do is to pull this up in a client meeting because we do ask for your home zip code, and people's eyes light up because they say that really is me. So I encourage you to go back and pull up the zip lookup. It's available at esri.com/tapestry. You can pull that up and check out what it says about your zip code. The final classification of demographic data is the business data. So this is not just business locations. This can be sales volumes of individual locations or employees, industry classifications. It can include bank locations, traffic counts, shopping centers, et cetera. A good example from the Living Atlas of the business category is this neat story map of the business landscape of spring. So this is looking at the average temperatures and then seeing the count of lawn and garden type establishments as well as their sales volume to see how they're doing with relation to the average temperature in spring. This is also another web map that's accessible in the demographics and lifestyle group in the Living Atlas, and this is the 50 largest shopping malls in the United States. Conveniently and showing you my favorite mall, but there's a lot of really interesting information here on how large the mall is, in terms of GLA, gross leasable area, the time it was opened, if there was a food court. So a lot of really valuable information on those types of businesses. I have talked a lot about what we have for the U.S., but we do have global coverage, and that's very important to note. Esri has coverage for over 120 different countries in the United States. This global coverage map will show you exactly what we have for each country. So this, again, is accessible through the Living Atlas. You can click on a country, and it will tell you whether we have data for the country. So here I'm on China. We have demographics from 2012 for China. It's available down to the province level. It's available through data enrichment, and if you click here, you can also get to the exact web maps on the Living Atlas that are accessible. So this gives you a link directly to the web map for average household size, And if you scroll over, you can also get directly to the web map for purchasing power per capita for China. So this is a great story map that will tell you exactly what we have for each country and gives you direct links to those web maps. Now, our strategy for global data was to really build what we had. So as I mentioned, we have 15,000 variables for the United States. We have about 30,000 for Canada. We covered all of the topics in the 4 categories that I spoke of. For global data, we have one source that we're calling our basic global data, which is about 100 variables per country. The advantage to this data set is that it's homogeneous. And what I mean by that is that the income quartiles are always the same, the household level data is always the same, the spend categories are always the same. So this is very advantageous for a multinational company who wants to easily compare data from country to country. You will always have the same attributes to compare. But this data set may not go down to the lowest level of geography, and it may not offer the most detailed level of data available by country. So to that effort, Esri is working with our content distributors to add advanced data sets for countries as we can make them available. So this takes a country-by-country study of what data set is available in the country, whether it be a census, a public data set, or it's some kind of commercially available vendor data set, seeing what attributes are available, does it meet our criteria for what demographics we need, and then adding those data sets to the platform. To do this, we're really working with our distributors. So we have distributors across the world. They know best what source is trusted in their country, you know, what census data, when it's coming out, what attributes people need, and we're learning from them, but we're also getting a lot of valuable information with them, and we are working with them to get these demographic data sets on the platform. To date, we have data for about 6 or 7 countries on advanced data sets available, and I just want to quickly show you what the difference between the two is. So this is the purchasing power per capita map in Germany for that basic demographic layer that I was explaining to you, where the variables will always be the same, where the breaks will always be the same, and it's good for a multinational who wants to compare country to country. Now you can see I've highlighted around Berlin, and this is the lowest level of geography that I have. Now I'm going to switch to a web map from data set. So in Germany, we're working with a company called Machiga, and they have advanced data and are available at lower levels of geography. So again, we're looking at purchasing power, same attribute, but we're looking at Berlin, and once I zoom in, you can see that I'm going to get much more detailed data for Berlin. So I'm going down to a much lower level of geography with these advanced data sets. So the advantage is twofold: lower levels of geography and more detailed attributes. I finally just want to let you know that we have documentation pages for all of our demographic data. They're available at the link shown. They have full information about all of the attributes that we have available. There's methodologies up there, variable lists, information about vintage and what geographies things are available. Every time we post a blog, anything relating at all to data, it's accessible there, as well as a really valuable FAQ section, a glossary section as well. You can access that global coverage map that I showed you right from those doc pages. So they're a very valuable set of information, anything you could need to know about Esri Demographics. And that's it, and I made it through without any internet disruption.
All right, thank you, Catherine. That was an awesome presentation. I'm happy you were able to complete it without any interruptions.
Me too.
We did have a question come through from Eric, and he asked, what data does Esri have for other parts of the world outside the U.S.? So I was thinking maybe if you could just place the link to those documentation pages for the demographic data in the chat window, and then that would allow everyone to be able to go up and look in their, home countries, what data is available in that specific area.
Sure. So within that link, you can access that coverage map, and I just want to mention that throughout the rest of the year, we'll be updating some of those basic data sets, and then we'll be adding even more advanced data sets. So right now, there's advanced data for about 6 countries, and we're looking to add at least 4 more in the next few months.
Okay, great. Thank you. And one more quick question before we switch over to Jim. Is it free to use these demographic services?
So the demographic services that are available in the demographic and lifestyle group do consume credits. However, as I mentioned, if you go to that ready-to-use map page and scroll down to demographics and lifestyle, there are a set of about 15 maps that you can peruse for free without consuming credits so that you can get a taste for what data is accessible and what's available.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go ahead and switch gears to Jim's presentation, and he's going to tell us all about the Living Atlas contributor application.
Yeah, we've rearranged a little bit here. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. This is Jim Herries. I'm a geographer here at Esri. I make maps, I make apps, I make story maps. I just watched two fantastic presentations on the content side in terms of maps and data, an amazing collection of data and maps that are available from Catherine and team, and then from the story map side, an amazing set of options to express that content and put it in context for a local community or a subject of interest. When we think about the Living Atlas, my job, one of my roles here is to think about how do we get more content into it? How do we get your content into it? How do we get those great story maps, those great map layers about your city or your state, your county, your company, your passion? How do we get those things into the Living Atlas so that they represent your entity the way you would like people to see it? And so for the past couple of years, I've been working with a team of people curating content. And what that means simply is we'll spend a few hours a week just going out looking in ArcGIS Online for story maps, for amazing applications, for new web maps. And we're looking for things that have a certain signature. And what I mean by that is when we look for things that the first time we see that item in ArcGIS Online or we see that application on someone's website, we say, wow, that's really good. We'd like that in the Living Atlas. And then what happens from there in the past has been sort of a bit of an email exchange. You know, hey, I saw your website. I love that application. Would you be interested in adding it to the Living Atlas of the world? And then there's an email back, maybe a phone call, and then we start to discuss technically what does it take to get that item into the Living Atlas of the world. And so I wanted to show you a little bit about our progress in this area, transitioning from sort of a manual phone call, email-laden operation to the contributor application. I've got my contact information here if you want to follow up with me separately as well. But the idea is I've got a web map, and I'll confirm that y'all can see my stuff here. Tamara, can you take a quick look here?
Here.
I want to show that.
No, so go.
Share my desktop?
Yep.
Yeah, that'll work.
There you go.
Great.
Yep.
So hopefully now you can all see my contact information. Simple illustration. You've got an item here at the top called the Great Britain Base Map. It's built in 2014. It's got a nice looking thumbnail. It's got a nice subject, a nice description. How do we place that inside the Living Atlas of the world? The solution is going to be this contributor app. We've got a blog posted right now that describes in advance what this is going to be about. You'll be able to nominate your apps, your maps, your story maps, your scenes for inclusion in the Living Atlas through this contributor app. Our customers, our partners, our Esri staff, distributors, etc. can nominate these items. And what that does is place the item in a queue for someone to review and say, yeah, I think that is something we want to appear in the Living Atlas of the world. So I've provided a link here to the blog where you will see this the updates about this contributor app. But let me kind of take you kind of through it. So here's a very nice person who's created a very nice web map, and they can take this item and score it in our contributor app. I want to give you the high level. After they open the contributor app and take a look at the score that the contributor app assigns to the item as it sits, Once they get the score above 80, they can nominate the item. They wait for a response from a curator. The response will occur over email and just say, hey, looks good, I noticed a typo here, or could you add this tag there? And once those changes are made by the item's owner, that item is now ready for us to put into the Living Atlas. So let me show you the contributor app and give you a quick 5-minute demo about this. We think most of the time you're going to find a lot of value from this, even by spending just a few minutes looking at your own items. So I've already signed in to the contributor app, and it shows all my items. I've got 56 items. Today I am known as Jennifer Bell, so there you go. This is our test account we use to make sure all the items we support are working. A quick tour of the interface. I can kind of sort the items by type or by the number of views, which is the most popular at this point when assessed by the number of views, which was the last modified with the most recent ones at the top. I can do filtering. I just want to look at my web maps, or maybe I want to look at any applications I have, feature layers, map layers, image layers, web scenes, city engine web scenes, etc. I'll go back to all items, and of course I can just do a search and type in something to find a specific item that isn't apparent on my page. But I happen to know that this item here, the web map called Transit, which was last updated yesterday or today. Today, 23rd? Sure, so last updated today. This is my item, and I'm thinking I want to nominate this transit map for the Atlas, Living Atlas of the World. So what we do is we take a quick draw of the map to kind of get a rough idea of how fast it draws. And I would like you to notice that in the middle we've got a current score for this item. And it says right now this item is scoring a 70 out of 100. And it indicates that a required score is 80. So you have to have a score of 80 to nominate an item. Well, what is this guy talking about? What's a score? We wanted to help you get your item ready for the Living Atlas by going through the things we most commonly find need adjustment. And think of this kind of like in school. If you ever had to write a paper where, or print a paper where you had to have 1-inch margins, you had to have a title centered in a certain size font, etc. This scoring is sort of a technical score, not a qualitative score. So what do I mean by that? We've taken the time to kind of go through each of the items that matter from a best practices standpoint. So we need a thumbnail for your item. We need a title. We need a summary and a description. And over on the left you can see I've got 7 out of 7 points for my thumbnail. I've got 4 out of 7 points for a title. I've got 0 points for a summary, probably because it's blank. And I've got only 1 point for my description. And I think if you were to look at this item, kind of qualitatively, you'd say, yeah, I think this item needs a little bit of work. I wouldn't want to publish this as is because the title's really not that good. So we tried to embody some guidance in each of these items that is part of the score. In this little eye tool, if you just hover over the eye tool, it will give you, I see there's a bit of a lag. Okay, I'll slow down. Thanks, Tamara. Sorry, folks. Okay, so you should now see that over each score element, you've got a little bit of guidance. In this case, it says enter a title that's easy to read, avoid the use of jargon or abbreviations. The item name answers the question. What is this? But the score is different from the guidance. The guidance is, hey, while we got you paying attention to this, let's make a few comments that might be useful to you. The score, we self-report here. Look, points are deducted if the word copy, demo, test, eval, and underscore, or words in all caps are used. And we award points if you've got 2 or more words in the title. So I see here on my title, it's a single word transit, it's all caps, so it violates, a couple of guidance principles. If I just kind of say what this is the Atlanta transit map. And maybe I want to take the time to edit up this description as well, because I see that from its guidance, it's looking for about 4 to 5 sentences, 12 words per sentence. Obviously, I don't recommend what I'm doing here where I'm just kind of filling space, but this is the idea that you can edit your item right here inside the contributor app, and then you can see what the effect of your change is. So I changed my title. Now it's a little bit more in line with the guidance. The summary meets our minimum technical requirement, which is we need about 1 to 2 sentences, about 10 words minimum. I think literally the requirement is we look for 20 words. And then on the description, we're looking for things like 48 words, a link to some additional content might be a good idea. So you can kind of go through and understand this is the recommended best practice, and whether you do it or not, you'll get a score, and you'll see your score start to build. So right now I'm at 86 out of 100. I could hit this nominate button, but I'd kind of like to review the rest of my items characteristics. So the credits, it's got some credits. We just need any text there to indicate, you know, who's the copyright with or where the data come from. And in terms of the access and use constraints, in my case, this is the standard Esri boilerplate for items we create. Under tags, this is probably the single most important thing we need from you is where do you see your item in the Living Atlas of the world? So if I look at these categories, these match the categories that exist in the Living Atlas of the world, and therefore they flow throughout our product. So if you're doing a map about Atlanta Transit, it's probably likely it's going to be in the transportation category. But if you needed to edit it, you could go in and say, well, actually, I think I'd like this to be in the boundaries or places. And as you choose these predefined categories on the left, we automatically add tags over here. You can also add your own tags by hand, if you like, to take the opportunity. You're just editing the item from a different interface here. We hit save and we check the score again. Under performance, we take a quick look in the case of web maps, and right now this is limited to web maps. We take a quick look at your draw time to see how long did it take for this map above to draw. And if it's pretty fast, you get full points. If it's pretty slow, we kind of point that out to you. Pop-ups. We actually take a look at your pop-up to see, hey, you don't have any pop-ups. We really recommend web maps have pop-ups, and we try to put that guidance in here. And so what you can do is then pop out of here. Sorry, I did that too fast. You can go back to, next to the thumbnail, we've got an item that opens in ArcGIS Online. So if I click that, I'm going to see the view of my item that I'm probably used to seeing. If I sign in, I can edit this thing to add a pop-up. So I'm going to do that quickly here. Okay, so if I open my item, and I just want to add a pop-up to this layer, I can do so. We'll do enable pop-up here, and we'll save it. And I'm going to go check my score real quick. To get an update on the score, I just need to go off to a different item and come back here and get a fresh score from the Performance tab. And it still says I've got no pop-ups, so it doesn't believe me. I'll hit save. Let's check our pop-up. Okay, so that pop-up did work. And I'll just hit a little page refresh to see if this would like to requery that item. Okay. That's a good one. It's not detecting that pop-up I just created. Camera, I'm going to write that down as a bug, and we're going to fix that before we release it. So that's good. Normally what I do is to detect, okay, you have a pop-up now. It's a default pop-up. If you were to define a custom pop-up, you get full points. You kind of get the idea. The last thing on this performance tab is sharing. Obviously, if it's going to be an item in the Living Atlas of the world, it needs to be shared public. But however, you might be working on an item, within your organization before you release it public. This tool works. It just won't give you a full score until you share it public. And then lastly, we look for you to just kind of update your profile and provide a thumbnail, a name, or a name of the team responsible for the item, and then a description. I encourage you, with each of these items, just get familiar with the guidance and the score rules as shown here. And what that will allow you to do is kind of get an idea of the technical requirement. Obviously, we are not interested in reviewing the qualitative aspects of the information provided. It's your item. You describe it and yourself the way you would like to. We just provide the general guidance. Now, I have a score of 86 on this item. I'm actually ready to nominate this. So if I press nominate, what happens? Good question. First of all, you'll get a message saying, thank you, this item is now in the queue for review, and someone will be in contact via email associated with your user ID. So back to our PowerPoint, kind of what happened, got the item above 80 and nominated it. I want to point out to you one value of the contributor app to you. You can also use it just to check all of your content in ArcGIS Online to just kind of, be curious. What's the score of this item? I don't have to nominate everything that I build for the Living Atlas of the world, but I might be curious how well the items I have shared publicly score. Could I do a little bit better with the title or description or the pop-up, etc. At this point, I punched the nominate button and I'm waiting for a response. So let me tell you very quickly what happens behind the scenes. The curator at Esri, and I can guarantee you we do not dress like those two people on the right of this slide. We don't get paid enough to dress like that. So, joke. So when a curator sees your item in their queue the next morning or the next hour, they see it instantly if they just happen to be logged in to their curator app. They can take a look at your item and go, oh, okay, yeah, sure, got a score of 86, everything looks good, I don't see any typos, might suggest this tag or that tag, and they'll send you an email saying, we received your item, here's a couple of suggestions. It's really between you and the curator to kind of negotiate any final changes, because you may not agree with the suggestions they make, or they may not agree with you tagging this item to go in every single category of the Living Atlas. Don't recommend that. Okay, so once you two are settled, you make your last changes, and at that point the curator can add your item to the Living Atlas of the world. When they punch that button, it happens instantly. It goes into the group. This URL is not live yet. If I click this, this will be where the contributor app resides, livingatlas.arcgis.com. So click along with me. Right now it just redirects back to arcgis.com. And that's because the curator app itself, as you saw, perhaps by example of that bug we found during this demo, we have a little bit more work to do just to get this released. We're very close. We thought we'd have it today, so my apologies for not getting it to you today. But we're very close to having it ready, and when it's ready, you will find it at livingatlas.arcgis.com. One last note before kind of wrapping up there. You'll look for an announcement on the ArcGIS blog. That'll be probably where the first place we'll go when the contributor app is made available. If you have questions, feel free to email me, jharries@esri.com, with questions about how the contributor app works. One question I know that comes up is, what are the rules based on? Who came up with that? There's a large number of curators here. We kind of meet every week, and as we learn by doing, we kind of have noticed what the best practices seem to be for a web map versus a web scene versus a story map versus a JavaScript app. So we just kind of start to notice things. We collect these observations, and the way we've built the rule base, it's very flexible. So if the community kind of feels a rule is a little bit arbitrary or it doesn't work well or it could be improved, that's the kind of feedback we're interested in receiving. Our whole goal with the contributor app is just to make it as easy as possible for the full weight of Esri to get behind your work and advertise it. Make it available to the rest of the user community so that when there's an emergency in your area of town, people can quickly find the parcels maps for your county or your town, or to find demographic information for your county or your town, etc. So that's the vision behind it. If we can make it easy to do, we hope you will be encouraged to share all your work or the portion of it you care to share with the world through the Living Atlas.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jim. I know we're a little over time, but we did have one question come in that I'd like to ask. What is the number of words that are recommended for the summary and description of the web map?
That's a great question. I like that. We debated very heavily about the number of words. We even talked about doing things like doing a readability score and things like that. And what we decided for the first release, let's just get a minimum number of words. I think we sampled quite a few of the existing Living Atlas contributions to see kind of what are people doing. And so here it is. In the title, minimum 2 words is required, but use as many words as are required to communicate and answer the question, what is this? And then in the summary, we're looking for 10 to, I think it's 20 words minimum. And in the description, it looks for, I think, literally 48 words. I'm not sure. I don't remember why we're so precise about 48, but there it is. Minimum 48 words. How you structure them is up to you. How you put it into paragraphs, up to you. There's no maximum, but we have definitely observed that really super lengthy descriptions where we try to put everything possible in that one section, those tend not to travel well in the system. It's far better to just kind of put 48 to 100 words together and then provide links to more detailed documentation about perhaps the data source or the methodology or the people behind it, things like that. I hope that's helpful. Our whole goal with the contributor app is to give you sort of the minimum and stay away from the qualitative discussions. I think that's between the curator and you to kind of work out if there is any kind of cognitive difficulty with your title. You know, we kind of want to work with you on that, not prevent things. Our whole goal is not to prevent things from getting into the Living Atlas. Our whole goal is just to help you make you aware of, you know, 10 or 15 things that can really help your item travel well, not only in the Living Atlas, but throughout the ArcGIS platform.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jim. So that wraps it up for today's webinar. I want to reiterate that the webinar is being recorded. It'll be available the end of this week, beginning of next week on Document Center pages. Under the Support tab, you'll find a link for archived webinars. Also, there were quite a few links that were shared towards the end through the chat window, and we'll be sure to include links to the story maps, document pages, and the population demographic pages, and of course the contributor app, you know, when it's fully released. And yes, I believe that's it. And if there were any other questions we may have missed through the chat, I will follow up with you and send you an email and answer your question. Thank you for attending the webinar and have a great day.